Tuatahi he mihi atu ki te haukaika e te hākoro, anau aha ko taku tai tōmuri mai, nau anō i whakatau tēnei huihuika a tātou. Nā reira, kai aku whanauku ki ka kanohi e mōhiotia nei au, me ka kanohi hou, nei rā te mihi o auraki mauka, ki ka mauka whakahi e karaputi ana i a tātou i tēnei wā. Nā reira, tēnā tātou, hoi anō, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora everybody! Right, well can I just say, I wish I had that first slide about the, the negative statistics sack. And I just agree with her. And then I can pretty much summarise the rest of this kōrero really quickly. Look, I'm obvious in my mihi. I just said I've come from the south. I am ngaitahu. I am kaitahu, and I'm wanting to present to you an idea which is something that we're trying to move within kaitahu, which is actually a new movement of thinking, and it's around the participation of our tamariki, our taiohi or rakatahi, but actually the way, again, how we feel about ourselves. I actually came to boarding school here in Auckland because my parents loved me, where people in that day struggled to think that there were any Māoris in the South Island, let alone ones that might look like me. Okay, so the theme of this is it's about, I'm suggesting we need to have a new movement which is about telling our own story, because for too long the story's been told about us. We haven't been in control of the narrative we've had about ourselves as a country, let alone our communities within it. And the danger when you leave it to others to tell your story is it doesn't fit. And not only does it not fit, but you run the risk of that story limiting the potential within that community, within that people, not only for an individual, but for generations. And that is our friends, our legacy. I go around the country. I've been on this mission for a little while. Now I've been backed by Ngāi Tahu to do it, so I can actually say I'm mandated to do it. And I challenge people, all sorts of people, Māori and non-Māori alike. I challenge them to think about, what is this narrative we have about ourselves as New Zealanders? How do we think about ourselves? When we're asking the questions around our identity, how do we rate ourselves? And importantly, what are the symbols or characteristics of this identity that we espouse? 98% hit rate. Depending on where you are in the country, sheep will come either 1 or 8. But pretty much we tell a very good narrative about ourselves. We've got the story down pat. In fact, whether I'm working with social workers, managers in oranga tamariki, teachers, or executives in companies, construction companies like Hawkins, we come up with the same story about ourselves. And you know what? We rate ourselves. We're really, really good about telling this story. We even can do it line by line. People come out with things like, we've got a she'll be right attitude. We punch above our weight. We're clean green. So we do it really well, and we've done it consistently well. Why? Because we tell the story over and over again to our community. So we're pretty proud to be Kiwis, are we not? Yeah. Pretty proud, yeah, especially when there are Aussies in the room, but we don't even need Aussies in the room to actually tell the story and own it. And then I do another challenge. I put it out to people to do the same thing, to ask the same question, but now think about Māori. When people talk about Māori, when people talk about the characteristics and the emblems of Māori identity, what do they come out with? Now just think for a moment, what do you think they come out with? Do you think they come out with the negative statistics straight away? No, generally, depending on the group that I'm working with, generally they start with, well, Māori are good at, what are Māori good at? Māori are good at singing, Māori are good at haka and sports, Māori are good at. Come on, guys, that was only 2. They usually say things like dance and got rhythm, and Māori are great musicians. And I say, well, if you're somebody like me, you're stuffed. If you can't throw a ball, you can't dance for crap, and you can't sing and tune, what have you got left? But usually it's still starting with the positive, and the challenge therein is it doesn't take long. Sometimes it needs prodding. But sure enough, the narrative comes through. What are Māori known for? Well, yeah, the good things. But then, of course, we have the negative statistics. Then we have educational failure. Then we have the tail in literacy and numeracy. Then we have domestic violence, once were warriors, health, education, all of the social All of the social demographics, we know that we're there. Want something for nothing. And it doesn't take long before we come up with this. And I ask people, how do you think it feels being Maori? How do you think it feels when you're a child and you know this is the vision that society has of you? How do you think you feel about your identity? How do you seed hope in the minds and hearts of children when they know? And I ask the question, how young do you think you are when you know? Early childhood teachers give me a response of 3 and 4. Most people say, 7, 8. You're young. Our babies know that this is the vision. That is the vision that the society has about themselves. So getting a job, even with a degree, not being a thief but being followed around a dairy, being watched when you sit on the bus by the bus driver, knowing exactly where you're sitting, all these things. That's our daily reality for our children. And then we say, hey, we've got to do something that creates social change. We've got to tell them that they should go get interested in maths and science, for God's sake. Do you think they don't know that educational success should bring economic sustainability, financial viability, success in our society? Of course our whānau know this. The challenge is they don't see that there's a place in that society for them. And we have constructed that narrative. We haven't challenged it. That's how we've constructed it. We allow it to perpetuate. And by doing that, we basically set our kids up to fail. So my challenge, the movement that I want our people to start thinking about is actually to own our story. We need to deliberately and in a planned way change the narrative we have out there in a society, challenge the negative and actually look at how we can establish a new narrative that builds cultural confidence. Make sure our children, make sure our tamariki know about not only the traditional economic prowess and feats of our people, but actually know about the now. And you might have to work a little bit harder because in the media, you can sure as hell find the negative pretty quickly. You have to work a little bit, you might have to turn on Maori TV to find a few more of the positive exemplars. But they're out there and our children need to see them. And what can philanthropy do? We can put the positive messages on steroids. We can challenge the institutions that perpetuate this kind of negative thinking in the bias that is in the minds of our teachers, not because they're bad, but because they have also been subjected to the same narrative. We need to change the story and not just talk about once upon a time there was a good Maori. Once upon a time our people learned how to navigate, but actually also focus on the now. The fact that we are still here, the fact that we still prevail despite this, in spite of this situation, is actually a testimony to tenacity, resilience, perseverance, and downright stubbornness that we need to actually inspire within the minds and hearts of our children. That's how we're going to get hope. We need to tell them about our legacy. We need to tell them the new story. And to do that, you need to actively work on those kind of kaupapa and initiatives that deconstruct the stereotype. 8 minutes. That deconstruct the stereotype so that our tamariki, so that our whānau have the ability to build a new sense of the cultural self, a new sense of our potential, to reframe the picture that has been constructed and deliberately imposed upon us for generations. No pressure. Change the world. Kia ora koutou.